Okay, so let's start with how just the super baby basics of the
Yeah.
science behind how intuition works. Because when we talk about this, it makes it easier for people to digest the clairs.
hmm
It removes the kind of the skepticism or the doubt on the mental filter, like, I don't know about that. Okay.
Welcome to the Intuitive You podcast, where we explore the concept of intuition from multiple perspectives, learn how intuition manifests itself, and the various ways it is naturally utilized in our world and daily living. I'm your host, Chantal Denise Gosselin, a scientist, a lifelong seeker of knowledge, an intuition teacher, and a passionate educator. Get ready as we dive into the mysteries of intuition and discover how it can enhance our lives and change our world. Welcome, everyone, to the Intuitive You podcast. Today's topic is how do we receive intuitive information, the Clair sisters. And for that, today we have our special guest, Alice Shea. Heather, welcome to the show. And
Chantal, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I really want to take the time to properly introduce you because I do consider you as an expert in intuition. And so Heather, for those of you who don't know Heather, she is the CEO and founder of Atmana Academy, which we'll talk a little bit in a moment. Atmana Academy is the first research-supported life coach training school specifically for intuitive life coaches. She featured in top publications like Entrepreneur Magazine, Spirituality and Health Magazine, Brainz Magazine, and Best Self Magazine. She holds a Master of Science degree in Clinical Mental Health Counseling from the University of North Florida. And she is a PCC certified through the ICF. She's a licensed heart math life coach and mentor. And when she's not working, she is an advocate for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, where she serves as a board member and chairwoman of the education division. And I would love to add that you're also a mother and a wife, which also takes some of your time. So Heather,
Yes, yeah.
welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for that intro. I'm like, wow, I'm like, that's me. My 12-year-old Heather is like, yay, go us.
Yeah, that's why I consider you an expert, and I wanted to bring you on this show today because you have the life experience, you've done the work, you've done the research, and I myself, I want to talk a little bit about Atmana Academy before we dive deep. I'm a graduate of Atmana Academy. It came into my life last December in 2021, and it has been a game changer. So you've been a mentor to me. You are, a leading teacher of teachers to become intuitive coaches or intuitive advocate out there in the world and realize that they hold what their true potential is and that they can be intuitive. So I find that for me, throughout Mana, I was able to realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm intuitive, how intuition come to me. And that's what we want to talk about today is the different clairs and the different modalities and how it comes for different people. Yeah. So
well, thank you for all that about Atmana. And it's funny that you said a teacher's teacher. I was working with a business coach. You're always, it's never ending, right? As a business owner and entrepreneur. And they said, well, what if you could describe yourself? I said, I would call myself the intuition's teacher's teacher. So I think to hear you say that's really like you are intuitive, right? You're picking up on that part, I think, of really what Atmana stands for and stands in. You've heard me say this 1,000 times, but I really believe that intuition is the new mindfulness, and it truly is as the next cultural zeitgeist, I think, for the Western world. Meditation took over in the 90s and the 2000s, and I see intuitive development as a natural extension of that, as the systems, the structures in our world that have provided us with security and some type of known path through life, these things are disintegrating. And so I think intuition is the way when we don't know the way. And right now in our culture, we do not know the way. Some would say that we're lost. I don't think we're lost. What I think we are is we're in new territory. And that's a beautiful, exciting thing. But when you don't have a map, what do, right? You stumble around in the dark. And I think that intuition is the means by which we discover our path forward or our truth from within without external authority. So To me, that's really like what intuition stands for. It stands for the internal ability to understand what is best for you, and what not only is best for you, but what is best for you that is also best for others. And Jordan, I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson, but he says
Yeah.
this all the time too. It's what's best for you, what's best for others now, in the
Mhm.
future, and forever. It's the highest good that we can align to. And so I can think of a life spent in no better endeavor than discovering the process through and by which we do this for ourselves and help other people do the same.
So well said, Heather. Thank you. I think you touch on something important, doing it for yourself and others. It's kind of like honing your own intuition for your own good, and not in a selfish, destructive way, but more in a way that by honoring your true self, essentially, we are elevating yourself and therefore elevating people around you and serving your true purpose or dharma, if we want to use those terms in a bit of a more spiritual context, but are
Yeah.
just like essentially serving your purpose as a good human on this earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
So yeah, thank you for that. I think it's very rich. So Heather, before we start talking about the Clair sisters, how did intuition, when did you first realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm intuitive too?
I realized it very begrudgingly. Yeah, to get that word out. Okay, so I have two answers for this. 5 years ago, if you'd have asked me that question, I would have said I discovered I was intuitive in 2012. I've never been an intuitive person. When I first woke up to these abilities, I very much saw myself as the lens through which I perceived myself was. I wasn't intuitive, and then I became intuitive. What I know today is that I've always been this way. I have been profoundly intuitive. Um, we could talk about the difference between what it means to be intuitive and psychic, but I also have psychic abilities. I have precognitive dreams. Um, I remember when I was in the 6th grade, I woke up, I had a dream the night before my 6th grade orientation. And I dreamed that in the dream, I walked straight to my teacher's classroom. Now, this was back in, I'm going to date myself here, but this was back in the 80s when you had to like get your butt in a car to go find out who your teacher was. So the next morning we woke up and I knew exactly where to go. I'd never been to this school before. I knew exactly where to walk. I knew exactly how my parents would drive me into the parking lot. I knew where the auditorium was going to be. I knew the whole dream had shown it to me. So on the next day we get up, I told my mom and dad, I was like, we don't need to go to the auditorium. I know where my classroom is and I know who my teacher is. It's Mrs. Jenkins. She's in Portable 9. And my parents were like, yeah, okay, sure. Right. Like they just blew it off, right? Because they're like, okay, you're telling stories. Well, we pull in and she's like, well, first of all, my mom was like, well, how did you know we were supposed to go to the auditorium? Well, because I had this dream, right?
Mhm.
So we pull in, I get out of the car, I don't even bother. I just walk straight to my teacher's classroom. And I would say that's my first memory of realizing that I just naturally had these abilities. And I
Mhm.
think like most intuitives, I learned at a very early age that this is not acceptable to talk about. It's
Mhm.
not acceptable to talk about. So you kind of naturally learn to ignore it.
Mhm.
And because you're ignoring it, it shuts off, right? Intuition and these abilities, psi abilities, are like any other skill. You have to cultivate it in order for it to be there. It will wither on the vine if you don't use it. It's just like any other skill. So I think I've always been this way. And as I look back on it, I'm like, oh my God, I have had more experiences like this than you can shake a stick. I just didn't realize that that's what they were. So I'm nuggeting this right really quickly for your listeners. If you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, I've never had an experience like that. I'm not an intuitive, or I don't really know if that's really real because I've never experienced it. What I challenge you to do is to stop right here and start looking back through your life through the lens of what if I was? What if that one time that I thought that thought or had that feeling, what if I stopped discounting that? What you are going to find is that you've got a whole slew of experiences that actually are pointing you back to this internal ability. But long story short, how I discovered this in my adult life was I had a medical crisis in 2012. I had a chronic illness. I had a surgery a year for 5 years. Doctors told me to have this big, massive surgery to remove some organs. And I really failed to thrive at the end of this surgery. I was at the end of my rope. I had some other there were many, many things wrong with me medically. And in addition to a diagnosis I was diagnosed with stage 4 hemorrhagic endometriosis. I had other ailments that they just didn't know what it was. And it was getting to the point where it was life-threatening, in that I just was so sick all the time. I was like failing to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So in my desperation to manage the pain, because, opioids were very easy to get your hands on when you are chronically ill, I discovered meditation. I'm a big nerd. I love the science. So I had started diving into the efficacy of the reduction of pain and pain management via meditative practices. So I found that I could drop into meditative states very, 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 very easily. And I used meditation to cope with the pain that I was in. So in 2012, I basically snapped with this. I'm getting sicker and sicker. And I call it my Lieutenant Dan moment. I don't know if you've watched the movie Forrest Gump, but when
Yes.
Lieutenant Dan was on the shrimping boat and he was basically just like calling out God, I had that moment. I was just like, okay, God, you know what? You and me, we're about to get some shit figured out, because I'm pissed. And if I'm going to die, then I want to know why. I want to know why this has happened to me. I've tried to be a good person. I've tried to do everything right. I've tried to be a good girl. I've tried to, just all of that crap, that the shoulds that we think we should do. Right. So, long story short, I went into meditation, and I had what I can only describe as a mystical or spiritual experience. The scientific literature would call this the spontaneous remission experience, right? This is very well documented, that people do have the ability, through what I would call the power of our minds, to heal ourselves on a physical level. That happened to me. So I had this experience, and I woke up the next morning physically healed. But what happened as a result of this is I established the Clair sister connection to what I would call my higher self. The Vedic Hindu tradition would call this the higher self, and the Christian tradition, we would call this our Christed self, right? Connection to our to the part of ourselves that's already one with God. However we want to conceptualize ourselves in relationship with a higher power, I made contact with that night, and that's what I believe healed me, was that contact. And I can tell you, I can only describe it as unconditional love. Like all of that corny crap you hear about, getting in touch with the divine, and it's loving, and all of that is real, right? It's 100% real. You just have to, it's like, you just got to be there to experience, to know it. So I woke up the next morning, not only physically healed, but with the ability to have this connection, and to see, to hear, to know things. And over a period of about 8 months, it was just unbelievable. I became so energetically aware. Again, at that time, I was a research assistant for a cognitive psychologist, and I had access to a university library. Lucky me. Yeah. So for a year, all I did was just dig into the research on this. So how did I do this? My driving question was, how did I heal myself? I didn't know that was possible then. So I just became obsessed. Like, what happened to me? How is it that I was so sick and now I'm not? And also I can sense energy, and I can know when people are lying to me. I can feel when people are sad. It was just absolutely insane. So over about 8 months, I developed these abilities, and I had a coaching practice at that time. I started integrating intuition in my coaching practice and realizing that it helped my clients in a way that was just absolutely mind-boggling, but totally practical and profound and very grounded, and help them in very real world ways. So fast forward to today, I'm here with Atmana Academy. I realized that really my purpose in life is to train and help other people unlock these abilities, and then help other people, right? It's at least 3 layers, a 3-layer cake. So that's really my story into this. And so what I've realized is everyone is intuitive. If you might think you're not intuitive, but you are, you can't deny it. You can't run from it. That is just a fact about our human species, the human animal. The research on this is that just like every human being is born with the innate ability to learn to walk, talk, speak, write. This is a normal human function. Everybody has the ability to breathe, to see, to taste, to touch. You're born with the ability to perceive and receive and send out energetic information, which is what we call being an intuitive, right? So being an intuitive is your first language. It's the primary language you speak. You learn how to speak with energy, to talk with energy, to sense with energy before you do with, speaking language
Words.
out of your mouth, right? So I call it our prime language, our first language. And we all know how to speak it, but we've forgotten how to lead with this in our lives. So I think that's what you're doing with this podcast, what you're doing in your practice as an intuitive practitioner. And really what we all want is to go home to this part of ourselves.
Home here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give you spirit fingers. That was amazing.
I love it.
And so there's so much that you said that I could dissect and unpack. And I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, this could be another podcast theme. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing your experience, first of all. And what comes to mind to me, there's two things I would love to unpack. Is first, you said at the beginning that psychic abilities and intuition are not the same, and you can explain why. So I would love for us to touch on that. But before we do, in your experience, you mentioned that you healed yourself. And, you know, there's stories like we know well-known Joe Dispenza, who has a similar story, and the power of the mind, and how you started to become intuitive or realize you have that gift already. And so do you think that it's necessary for a human being to get to that critical point of, like, you know, because you hear those stories of like cancer remission. There's this stage 4 cancer remission story that I love. I presented to my students in class one day. How is it possible to maybe avoid that tipping point, or do we need to reach that tipping point of sickness or exhaustion or burnout before we're like, okay, that's it, something needs to change? Is it possible to prevent that? What are your thoughts on that?
So we have a saying here in the South: I'd rather be slapped than shot. You you don't have to get shot. You don't have to, you could just be slapped, right? Like so here is how this works. You will be given your own higher self, your own system, your own soul is going to help you back into the truth. It's always trying to guide you into the truth. And it does that using the least amount of nudging, right? Necessary. Okay. The least amount. The reason why people get sick, the signs get bigger and bigger, we find ourselves in accidents, is because we're not listening. Or we don't know how to read the signs. Again, we're not paying attention. We shut this part of ourselves off a long time ago. This is why I got sick, because I was denying. My soul was just like, we're not doing this anymore. You're going to pay attention. I would like to note here that not everybody has remission. People do die of their illnesses. You don't have to pay attention. You can choose to just not pay attention to it. Okay. Now, am I suggesting that people who die from their illnesses or who suffer from illnesses, this is their fault in any way? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. Again, we're at the stage in our evolution where we are not consciously aware of how this is happening within our system. We are not consciously aware. We have not been taught that we do, in fact, possess the ability to heal our body on a physical, emotional, mental level, period, full stop, end of story. If you want evidence of this, go research the placebo effect. Okay, this is what Joe Dispenza's work. So this is documented, yeah. But where we're at in our evolution is we haven't figured out how to use this ability of the mind reliably. I think we're just now sticking a toe in the water. Oh my God, I can't. In 100 years, we're gonna crack the code, and it's gonna be amazing, right? So. No, you don't have to. You don't have to struggle. But what you do need to do is develop the ability to listen to yourself. Your body is talking to you. Your spirit is talking to you. Your body is an alive, intelligent being, by the way. And you are not your body. We are not our body. I am in this body. Heather is a name, my personality, of this personality in this lifetime that I call my quote unquote myself Heather. I'm not Heather and I'm not this body. Okay. I'm incarnated as the personality that is Heather in Heather's body, but I'm not Heather and I'm not this body. Right. I have a deep and intimate relationship with these two little beautiful creatures called Heather and this body. Right. So it's about having a relationship with yourself and orienting towards spirit first. You're letting higher self lead in relationship with your human self, your body, your emotions, your thoughts, right? All of these things are aspects of self. So until we learn how to effectively communicate with these intelligent aspects of our beingness, we will continue to suffer. But the moment that you figure it out, the moment that you start listening, and the moment that you let yourself be guided, is when miracles happen. And this goes, I think it's interesting. It's important to remember that this goes way beyond not being sick and not suffering. Can you imagine a world where we start making good people great and great people amazing and amazing people powerful and powerful? I mean, it's like the possibilities for this are unbelievable. Human beings are so incredibly creative and powerful. So to me, I want to live in a world where we're over, are we suffering anymore? I want to start co-creating with this energy. I want to start, building from a place of strength, maximizing our potential.
Absolutely.
We're not there yet. We've got to get out of the damn hole. I get it. We're still mending the wound 100%. But there is a story beyond that. And I think a big reason why we don't heal our wounds is because, well, who the hell am I without this problem? Who the hell am I without my endometriosis? Who the hell am I? If I realize that I'm not the good little Mormon girl my parents taught me to be, and I actually am this kind of psychic weird person who's obsessed with aliens, and, that's me, dude, I'm weird. So, I think that again, it all goes back to this relationship with ourself and giving ourselves permission to lead from that authentic place. And so, that when you get back in touch with that voice and you start making decisions in your daily life based off what you know to be true, you stop suffering. You don't get cancer 10 years from now because there's no reason to have it, because you're listening. Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. So it's interesting what the way you expressed it, that you're not the good little Mormon girl. Because for those who don't know, you grew up a Mormon.
Yeah.
And so by listening to yourself, by listening to those cues, what some people could call God, your higher self, your intuition, your inner voice, your gut feeling, whatever it is that is telling you to go there, don't go there, or you're like drawn towards something, you can't really explain why, kind of like listen to that. If we could be encouraged to listen to that and embrace who we are, what a magnificent world. That's what I'm getting out of what you said. So
yes. Yeah. 100%.
Amazing. Yeah. So speaking of those voices that speaks to us, I hear voices. I see dead people.
Oh God, that's great. What do they say? If you pray, prayer is totally, it's fine to talk to God, but if God talks back, you're schizophrenic. It's like, I don't understand why if God talks back, there's supposed to be something wrong with you. Right.
Right.
I don't get it. Right. It's normal. You see the prejudice right there that we have in it. Like, yeah, God speaks to us. If you want to call it God, you want to call it spirit, whatever, God does talk to us. Absolutely.
And there's a very popular book with stories like that. It's called the Bible. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Right.
Exactly. Oh my God. It's called the Bible,
burning
right?
bush, and
the burning bush, all the prophets who
Abraham.
were psychic as hell. They could see into the future. That's what a prophet is. Yeah.
I know.
Totally.
Yeah, we based a whole religion, but when we start to talk about it in our own lives, people are like, "You're crazy."
Yeah.
That's woo-woo stuff. And so that's kind of like the goal. I want to like remove that woo-woo stigma around intuition. And so talk about a little bit, if you want to touch on the science behind that, because I know you're a HeartMath mentor, advocate, and I know there's research from HeartMath, which I love. And so talk about the different clairs, so the different ways, modalities that we receive information.
Yeah.
I can speak for myself that was life transforming for me, knowing that, okay, so I receive information through clairvoyance. And even saying clairvoyance, people think like, oh, crystal ball, this, they have this like psychic image of this woman with the crystal ball, but it goes beyond that image. And also I know I'm clairsentient, so I can feel things. And like you mentioned your story, being young and knowing where Mrs. In grade 6 was, I am very sensitive. I can sense people's emotion. And so for a long time, I thought I was, there was something wrong with me, but now I realize like, oh, wait a minute, it's not my emotions that I'm feeling. So how can I use myself, also yoga, meditation, and just awareness of understanding what I'm feeling, that anxiety is not mine. And so how can I understand it and know what to do with that kind of thing, that information that's coming. So I want to dive deep into that.
Cool. Okay. So So let's start with how just the super baby basics of the science behind how intuition works. Because when we talk about this, it makes it easier for people to digest the clairs. It removes the kind of the skepticism or the doubt on the mental filter, like, I don't know about that. Okay. So remember when we were kids and people said, oh, you've got this sixth sense, or your grandmother would say, just go with your gut, right? Well, we talked about our sixth sense at that time, metaphorically. Of course, you don't actually have a sixth sense. You're just following your gut. Well, it's not the 1970s anymore. It's not the 1700s anymore. We actually now know through peer-reviewed science, this is in the can. Nobody argues about this anymore. Okay. People who know the literature just like yawn at this. It's not a big deal. It's just not mainstream yet, right? We now know that we do in fact have a literal sixth sense.
Yeah.
I mean, an organ. Like, this is almost like finding out you have another nose or something like that, right? It's like that incredible. So intuition is not, your sixth sense is not a metaphor. It's an actual psychophysiological capability you have, a mind-body ability, okay? So the organ, if you want to look at it like that in terms of sensate, right? Sensate meaning the ability to sense things. Your sensate organs, like your nose is a sensate organ. It allows you to experience the sense of smell. Your eyes are a sensate organ. It allows you to see information in the materium, right? So you have a sensate organ that intuits energetic information, just like your eyes pick up information that is visual. Okay. So the organ is a neurological pathway between your heart and your brain. So if we had to say, what is your intuitive organ, we would say it's your heart. Now, it does connect with our brain. We have three brains. I'm not going to digress, but we actually have three brains. Fun fact, human beings have three brains. You've got one in your head, one in your heart, and one in your gut. So how intuitive information is perceived is the electromagnetic field of our heart. Okay, this is how we do EEGs and EKGs. It's all there picking up on it, right? There's an electromagnetic field that your heart emits, okay? Intuitive information comes into this electromagnetic field. Now, the electromagnetic field works at the subatomic level, meaning the quantum level, meaning the level of the photon. So we know that everything in our physical world that we can see, taste, hear, and touch with our regular five senses is made up of what? Atoms. It's made up of atoms, right? But what's an atom made up of? It's made up of photons. So we're going subatomic. We're going from atomic to quantum now, okay? Max Planck, all these people who, have gotten into quantum physics.
Yeah.
So underneath the atom, in the non-material world, the world of the photon, where the photon is the base unit of information, not the atom, like here in the material world, the base unit of information is an atom, right? In that world, okay, that's the quantum world, the electromagnetic field of your heart is where you meet that world. You are one part non-physical and one part physical. You are one part, in the ancient esoteric tradition, we called this world, that is the quantum world, the spirit realm. This is what all of our ancient ancestors call the spirit realm. The modern word for this is quantum physics, the realm of the world we cannot see, right? The non-material world, but we know it's there. We know it's there. CERN can split a photon. Okay, hello. So we know it's there. It's no longer up for debate. Here's the kicker right here. Here's how you're an intuitive. This part right here is what we need to pay attention to. What people don't know is that human beings have the ability naturally to read that photon, that field, that quantum field. The foundation upon which our entire material universe is made of, that field, the divine matrix. Some people call it the divine matrix, okay? So as a human being, you are one part energy, one part material, one part divine, one part human. And this electromagnetic field that is always there, it's always intuiting, it's always generating, it's always reading, it's always doing its thing. Just like your lungs are always breathing air, your heart field is always intuiting. Okay, it's always just putting out its energy. That is how intuitive information comes to you. It comes into the heart field, it pops up to your brain in about 3 seconds, boom, it registers consciously, and then your little neocortex, first it hits your limbic system, then it goes into your neocortex, and that's when you go, something's not right here. And then it shoots right down to your gut. And most people become aware of intuitive information at the gut level. It goes heart, brain, gut. Okay. So they get it at the gut level. Some of us get it, we'll start vibing here. You get anxious, you see somebody and you just know to stay away from them and you don't know why, right? It's because you're reading their energy. My favorite scene in the movie Dumb and Dumber, which in my opinion should have won an Academy Award. It's one of my favorite movies. He's like, Harry, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm just going to stay at the bar, put out the vibe. Because he was trying to get Mary to fall in love with him. Like, even in Dumb and Dumber, they know like vibes, right? You're reading the vibes. So that is how we send and receive energetic information. Every living thing in the world has this energetic field. Every living organism. The human body actually has two, one off the brain and one off the heart. So it comes into us via this electromagnetic field and we experience it. It's just all information. It's just energy, okay? We experience it through what I like to call gates. I want you to think of a water hose right now, a garden hose, okay? The gate is the garden hose. The water is the intuitive information or the energetic information, okay? So we have these, and there are many, 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 many different gates. There are 5 that are most easy for people to wrap their head around. So let's talk about the Clair. So you're just this little being out here. You're intuiting all the time. You got this electromagnetic field that's feeling things, and it's bringing to you information on the inside of your system. It's not coming from external. It's not exoteric, right? It's not out here. If I pick up my Starbucks can, I can feel it with my fingers, right? It's external to me. It's outside of me, and I'm feeling it with my hands, right? I'm in relationship with something that appears to be not me, right? Your intuitive information happens internal. It's esoteric. You have to learn intuitive development is about paying attention to the sensations that are happening within you, inside, internal. The kingdom of heaven is within. Okay. So it comes into your system and you experience it just like you have these little 5 senses that help you figure out the material world. You have these clairs that help you decipher and receive information on the intuitive level. So the first one, and the ones I'm going to give you mimic our 5 senses, so it's easy. Clairvoyance is the ability to have inner sight, to see inside of. So if I tell you to visualize a purple elephant, can you visualize a purple elephant? If you can see if you can just imagine a purple elephant in your mind right now, that is a form. It's similar to how clairvoyance feels. Now you're generating that thought in your head, so it's not a clairvoyant hit, right? But imagination, when you just visualize something, that's the same operating system that intuition uses inside your head. It's just images that are popping up in your mind as you pay attention, properly pay attention inside of yourself. So clairvoyance is clear sight. Clairaudience is clear. The word clair, CLAIR in French just means clear. I'm sure you know that, you speak French. So clairaudience is clear hearing. Clairsentience. So there's 2 types of clairsentience. So clairaudience is the ability to see. Clairaudience is the ability to hear. Clairvoyance is the ability to see. Clairsentience is the ability to feel. Okay. But there's 2 types of ways humans feel. We feel emotions, but we also feel bodily sensations, like in our bodies. Okay. So clairsentience breaks down into 2.
Like I'm hungry.
Clairsentient. Like I'm hungry. Or my knee hurts. You're around somebody who's sick and all of a sudden your knee starts hurting and you're like, why is my knee hurting? And then you ask them and they're like, yeah, I've had knee surgery. I just got out of my cast, right? You're like, oh, that's weird. So clairsomatic, clairsentient, somatic. And then you have, so clear feeling somatically, somatic meaning body. Okay. And then clairsentience, empathic. So this is when someone says, I'm an empath. So then you have, clairsentient, empathic is I clearly feel emotions. I have the ability to perceive emotion. Okay. So that's 4. And then the one that I love, that I'm noticing the most, people are waking up to the most, is claircognizance. And this is just knowing. You just know, you don't know how you know. If you've ever talked to somebody and they were asking you for advice or they were really upset and you just started talking and all of a sudden this really profound wise stuff came out of your mouth and you were like, holy crap, I'm advised by my own advice. That was really good. How did I know that? That's claircognizance, right? So these, and there are others, but these are the ones that most people are experiencing all the time, and they have no idea that
That's
that is what's going on.
it.
Yeah. Clairalience is psychic smell. If you've ever been in a place and all of a sudden you smelled flowers or maybe sulfur or something gross. Clairalience, that's the clear smelling. Clairgustance is clear taste. So there's a lot of them, but alience and the taste and the smell, most people don't experience a lot.
Yeah. So I just find it amazing that it's through our five senses, but it's like our internal five senses. They get triggered internally through essentially the information that is coming through our electromagnetic field from the heart, going to the brain, and then it gets experienced either at the brain level or goes back down to the gut. And I remember seeing something from the HeartMath Institute explaining that, which you've done brilliantly, by the way. As a teacher, I can say that it was well said. And you mentioned claircognizance being, I guess, the hardest one to detect, because it's like, how do I know that I know, or how do I know that, is it a thought generated, or is it something that is coming intuitively? And I find from my personal experience, and I don't know about you, that I've noticed that most people that are claircognizant are scholar people, are people that are usually very into like research and or using their brain a lot into their work field or their regular day to day. And usually they're the more skeptical about intuition, I find. But they're probably the most intuitive without even being aware that they are intuitive.
I agree. And the thing I've noticed with this is the reason why I think people are academics, the reason why people want to be a scholar is because they're a truth seeker.
Yeah.
And they want to know the truth, and they know intuitively that they live in a world of lies and deception. And so I know that's why I like the research. I'm trying to figure out what is true and what is real. So I have found that people who are highly skeptical, it's beautiful. I think their skepticism is beautiful because they want to know what is true. And they're wise enough to know that people lie. I mean, look at the world we are in. I know it's not a pleasant conversation, but it's important to look at things in the face and call them what they are. We live in a world of deception and lies. And it's also a beautiful world. I heard someone describe Earth once as the highest realm of hell and the lowest realm of heaven. And that's how you get a Christ and a Satan all in one place. Yeah. Whether we want to think of these things as constructs in our psychological mind or actual beings who roam the planet, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. This is what we contend with at the human level. And no one can deny that their existence on whatever level of analysis we want to look at it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's why scholars, I love having conversations with atheists. They're honestly just trying to figure out, an honest atheist, right? Not someone who's doing it in that, adolescent, sort of like a petulant child rebelling against the religion of their mommy and daddy. Somebody who's doing it from a real place of trying to seek truth. I think they're some of the smartest, most brilliant people in the world. And that's why I think a lot of people who do study at the academic level eventually do come around and believe in God.
Yeah.
They study the universe and its mysteries, and they're like, shit, there's got to be something out there. They arrive at the conclusion that there is an intelligent force that designed this place we're in. And if you want to call it God, fine. So I love skepticism. I think when it's done honestly, may we all carry that in our heart, because it means we're seeking truth for ourselves. We're not just blindly accepting what people are telling us. Yeah.
And using your intuition also to gain some of that knowledge, I find is an important tool, which I hope, like in my utopic future world, that people will hone more. And I feel like it's so much more important nowadays, and we've experienced it through the pandemic, that uncertainty. And now with information coming from so many different sources with social media, for example, it's like, what is true? There's like, what is fake news? What is this? And not to get into that tangent, but just understanding that there's just so much information coming from all these directions. And then it's like, okay, well, what is my truth? Where do I fit in? What do I believe? What resonates true to me? And I find that you kind of summarized it well with intuition as a tool of getting that information. Yeah.
I think what we're really getting down to with this is it's much easier to trust external sources. None of us, I talk a lot about about stepping into spiritual adulthood. We are not an adult until we realize that nobody knows better than you do. Do you remember that moment when you were a kid and you realized, oh my God, my mother's name is Robbie, Alice, and my dad's name is Bill. So I was 16 years old when I realized, like, oh my God, my mom and dad aren't mom and dad. They're like Robbie and Bill. They're just like two people who got married and like had a passel of kids, and I'm one of them. You know, I was just like, oh my God, it was just terrifying to realize that my parents are just two people doing the best they can. They don't, like, in the grand scheme of the accumulation of all human knowledge, my parents don't know any more than I do. They're just doing the best they can with what they've got. So the existential terror, and I want to underline that word, terror.
Yeah.
Terror of realizing that nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody's coming to save you. Mommy and daddy aren't going to fix it. You're on your own, kid. That is what we're running from right now. Because if nobody knows, if Fauci doesn't know, if Biden doesn't know, if Trump doesn't know, if your pastor doesn't know, if the Pope doesn't know, if the president of the Mormon, if the prophet of the Mormon church doesn't know, if you're, you know, then who knows? Who knows? Who's gonna help me? Who's gonna stop all the monsters from coming out from underneath my bed and getting me? I don't know. I damn sure know. I don't know. So who knows? Who's gonna help me? Okay, well, the answer is you. You are going to help you. You are more than you think you are. You've got this ability inside of you to make your own decisions, to become an adult, to accept the responsibility that this is your life and you got to live it. And yes, you're responsible for it. And that ultimately life is benevolent. I think it really comes down to, what do you believe about life? So what we're really in for here is realizing that nobody knows better than you. And most human beings, and this is going to be controversial to say, and I just don't care because it's my personal truth right now. I could change my mind tomorrow, but I believe that the vast majority of human beings would rather die in slavery to authority that they're not even, I don't even know if they're concerned if it's good authority or not. Because I don't think they're believing in it because it's good. I think they're believing in it because they don't want to be responsible. Are you familiar with the Stanley Milgram experiment?
Rings a bell. Yes. Yeah.
80% of their subjects shocked a human being, inflicted harm on another human being because they were told to by an external authority.
That's it.
And 80% of the people, So even when they knew they were hurting that person, they did not have the psychological resources to say no to an authority who was asking them to harm. They willingly harmed other people because they could not look that authority figure in the face and say, no, I won't do it. I won't. So are you following me here? This is why I'm saying where we're at in our species right now is we are lost. We are desperate to give our power away to some type of mommy and daddy that are going to make everything okay, right? So all of this is now falling away. We can't pretend that our politicians give a shit. We can't pretend that our pastors know. There's no one who knows more, right? We're seeing it now. What do they say? Don't meet your heroes. You're going to realize they're just normal people.
Yeah.
This is what we're seeing. And so whether we like it or not, we're being given the opportunity to realize this about life and about ourselves and develop the inner fortitude of trusting ourselves, of saying, you know what, I have the answers for me. I don't have the answers for you, but I've got the answers for me. This is what my heart and my spirit are telling me is the truth. Okay. Now, what happens when we step into that space of saying, okay, I'm going to live an intuitive life. I'm going to trust my heart. What happens is we're scared of being wrong. How do I know if it's my intuition or if it's my ego or if it's my wounds or if it's my past programming or genetic baggage? Which voice is it? Is it the voice of fear? Right. So it's a mess. It's a mess because the minute you go you make the decision to start listening to this voice within you, you realize something, which is that you're a frickin' mess. And of course you're a mess because you've never been taught any of this. We do not, yes, it's a damn mess. So there are two things we can do with this. We realize it's a mess. And then what do? We run and go back to mommy and daddy. Try to, Cypher, the movie The Matrix. Cypher wants to be put back into the Matrix. So in that moment, when you wake up and you realize, oh my God, dude, like my ego and I got all these problems and issues. Good. Now you're at least in relationship with all of these parts of yourself. So it's about not running back, not being afraid and giving our power away, and standing in the knowing that it's our responsibility to figure out all of these different aspects of ourselves and how we move through the world as adults, taking responsibility for our lives and for what we are here to do as we walk in our dharma, if that makes any sense at all.
Absolutely. Like when you said, essentially accepting that, like the AAs would say, first step is admitting you have a problem, being like, okay, I am a mess, or, maybe, I don't know if a mess sounds a bit.
I'm a mess.
I'm a mess.
I'm a mess all the time. I love to say I'm a mess because like the reason why I say it like that is because we pressure ourselves. We pressure ourselves to have all these answers. We pressure ourselves. I am a child. I am a little baby girl. If I I'm powerful and I'm smart and I'm strong, but if I live to be 90, I still haven't figured out really very much about life, have I? Right? So I think being childlike with this and just giving ourselves permission to make mistakes and let it be messy, like when you finger painted, like when you were kids, you didn't care if it was a mess. You were like, so that's why I say it's a beautiful mess. It's a beautiful mess.
I think you touched something really nice here on bringing the 5-year-old messing with or playing with some paint, is that it's okay to be messy and it's okay to explore. And when something comes intuitively, to kind of like, okay, I'll explore that. And it's okay if I make a mistake, or is it a mistake? There's a quote, and I don't remember it word for word, but in art, they see a mistake as just a new way of creating something new. It's like, oh, that was a mistake. Or Bob Ross. I don't know if you've ever watched Bob Ross.
His happy accidents. Yeah. Bob Ross.
Happy accident. Oh, just, it's all good. And so imagine if we could like paint our lives just like Bob Ross paints, and just being like, oh, intuitively a little stroke. Oh, that's just, and then you make a tree out of it, and then something beautiful gets created. And so I like to use that analogy sometimes to be like, you know what? As a longtime perfectionist, it's okay to be messy. It's okay to make mistakes. So I feel like with intuition and what you mentioned is kind of like, give yourself permission, pay attention, and it's okay if you don't get it right the first time. And I can see
what is right. Who says what's right?
Who says it's right? And the more you play with intuition, and one thing I'm grateful for with Atmana is we had these occasions to be able to share our intuitive hits or information that we were feeling, seeing, and whatnot with each other, and kind of like have it validated at first, because you're like in your silo alone at home. How are you ever going to know if this is intuition or not? So when you're able to bounce it back with someone else and ask questions and be daring and try different things, and then slowly magic starts to happen and you gain confidence and so on. So to touch on that. But
that's called reality testing. I'm a big believer in reality testing because to go practical with this, like the whole point of intuition is to lead your life in practical ways. So reality testing is great because then we realize, like, I think we sit in our, like you're saying, we sit in our silo and we wonder, oh my gosh, is this, I really like the word, is this useful versus is this accurate? Is it useful, right? So is this useful? Like, we're never going to know if an intuitive hit is accurate. I have done intuitive readings with people. I've been doing this for 10 years. To this day, I get emails from people I have not talked to in 5, 6, 7, 8 years telling me, oh my God, that thing you said to me 8 years ago just happened. I just bought a house on a lake. Or, you know what? This thing that kept coming up repeatedly in session that I never resonated with, I want to let you know that I get it now. So quite literally, we never know because intuitive information is quantum, meaning it's beyond space-time. It could be for the, and it's so far beyond anything our conscious minds can understand anyway. Sometimes it's sitting right in front of our face and we miss it. So I just like to think of it like, is it useful?
Yeah.
And then, like you're saying, moving beyond the notion of like, is it, okay, so I love to play with this idea, like, is it right? Is it wrong? What we're really saying, is it useful or is it not useful? Does it apply or does it not apply? But it shows you something about the way we've been taught to think about life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it
I mean,
right?
as a teacher, I can say like, you raise your hand, have the right answer. And some people are like, I don't want to raise my hand. What in case I don't have the right answer? And the whole
What if I
class will
don't?
know that I'm wrong. And
That I'm wrong. And then, but what is it presupposing? It presupposes this authority that somehow has all the answers. And now we're back to giving our power away.
Yeah.
You see how this works? It's so fascinating when you start to think about it. Because at the end of the day, what it is to be an intuitive is to say to yourself, I refuse to give my power away. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to listen to other people. I'm absolutely going to allow myself to be guided and be humble and be childlike, to admit that what I love about being intuitive is I find out every single day that stuff I thought I knew, I don't.
Yeah. The more you know, the less you know.
The more you know, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? The more a person knows about a subject, the more likely they'll self-report to being a novice. And the less a person knows, the less of an expert a person is in a subject.
Yeah.
The more they will report being an authority on it. So, it's so weird, right? But
irony.
But yeah, so I think just be a kid. If you get it wrong, so what? Who said you got to get it right, girl? You don't have to get anything right. You can just be wrong all day and you're still valuable and wonderful and brilliant and cool and somebody that's worth being best friends with and someone who's got something to say, right? It's not about being right. It's about exploring, and it's about declaring what you believe and being an honest relationship with yourself and other people. Yeah.
Big key. Yeah. So we have to wrap that. I feel we don't have to, but I feel like we should wrap things up. And I want to finish by saying, if people want to explore more of that, and maybe, because I know you offer free training in your intuitive coaching clinic. So the web link will be pasted copy and pasted at the bottom of this podcast, so people can check that out and sign up for those free training with you.
Yeah. We do a free intuitive coaching clinic once a month. And then we also have free training around our certification. So our life coach certification program, you can find me on Instagram or just sign up for the free clinics. And once you're on, when I email you, I never let you go. No, I'm just kidding. So on the email list, we'll be like, hi, Master. So, so once you're in for the free clinics, you'll hear about all the other stuff that we've got going on.
Yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on. And that's kind of like how I heard about you. You were offering like a 5-day sort of mini training, and I got to hear about you, and I was like, oh, they're for real. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's our Call to Coach workshop.
Yeah.
So
amazing. So no, I'll add your tagline for your Instagram as well, at Heather Alice Shea. Heather, thank you so much. I feel like this conversation could continue for hours and hours. You have such a beautiful mind and so much experience to share with the world. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.